So hello everyone, hope you're here as well. So the crypto topic is quite tough, right, Karolis? So we will be try to discuss what is happening right now.
Yeah, so crypto is a hot topic for the last 5-6 years, I guess. Especially now, a lot has been going on in the recent times. I'd say the most recent thing is a pre-final version of MiCA that will hugely impact every crypto player, central bank, Web3 game developer, or anyone who taps into the crypto potential. It's also been interesting for the investors. Recently, we saw a surge in prices, especially Bitcoin is now touching 30,000, whereas it was around 12 to 15 at the beginning of the year. So it's looking good.
But so can we say that crypto winter is over and now we are going to the crypto spring, or we're still somewhere in the middle?
I would say we're still in the middle. It's a bit too early to say that we passed the winter period because it's not solely impacted by one factor. It's impacted by multiple factors, and economy as a whole is as we can see, is not doing its greatest right now. And we should wait a little bit more to say that we fully exited the winter period. That's also reflected in prices and commodities. What's going on in those markets?
So in a room, could you please raise your hand? How many of you are investing in crypto?
Wow.
Oh, we have a quite right place to.
How many of those use Binance?
Perfect. So now you say that the MiCA regulation are coming, there are a lot of investors around, so we can try to understand how this infrastructure or how it will be changed and what exactly will be changed for the investor, what they take into the account, what will be changed for ordinary customers who also would like to start investing but not were investing before.
Yeah, so MiCA is the first major step in Europe to regulate crypto. Before that, for the, I would say, last 5 to 6 years, it's been mostly covered by AMLD5, which is an anti-money laundering directive, very technical, which is used by banks. All the banks that you use, they implement the directive, and crypto fell under that same structure. So it was not very well regulated for both the companies that do work in crypto sector, for regulators as well. They had very limited powers, and especially for retail customers, they had very little recourse to action, very little consumer protection. What happens now, MiCA takes a very big step in the retail consumer protection. We can see a lot of new laws and especially articles that address that. For example, users who buy tokens will now be able to reject within a 14-day period, depending, of course, if it's a limited sale period. By the end of that limited sale period, there will be change to the marketing materials. For example, those issuers who will have to issue white papers, they have to follow the marketing strategy within the white paper. So we will see less false advertising and incentives to buy to users who are not knowledgeable about the assets. And in general, it really starts to cover the fundamentals. I'd like to say that there are still some topics that are left untouched by the MiCA. First of all, it's NFTs and utility tokens. And then a lot of things that are important, such as e-money tokens or technical implementations, they are left to level 2 regulations, meaning that European Securities Market Authority and other EU regulators will have to come up with technical implementations down the line. Similarly, how it was done with other finance laws, directives in European Union.
Yeah, exactly. This level 2 documents is something that is even more important than the major part of the text, and we're still waiting for it. Hopefully, they will be developed soon. And just to remind that, of course, the major idea of this regulation is not the kind of limitation on the market, right? It is how to move more structured, how to get to the structured market, and how to ensure this information disclosure to protect the customers. But still, these risks from the investing or buying, selling remain on the customer account, right? So we do not and speculate this regulation. So it do not cover the losses. So everyone still can meet them, right?
Yes, Well, now I would say it's clear that the issuers will be liable. And in MiCA, it says that those issuers who will claim false information in their white papers or will intentionally lie will not be anymore protected by legal clauses in their terms and conditions which protect them against that. So retail users will have a recourse of action to claim their losses, as well as other users who suffered losses because of the simply false information, which is how it's done in this financial markets, where if you publicly trade a company especially, and if you publish information that is wrong, it impacts the market, it impacts the price, and people suffer the losses, you have to pay for that.
Exactly. You still need to do the analysis by yourself. That is quite important. But coming back to the companies, so in your opinion, how far this preparation and where is this preparation going? Could you please a little bit more describe the structure of the Baltic crypto market? Because what we see kind of migration from Estonia when the Estonians are started to review the regulations and requirements. This pool of customers have been migrated to Lithuania, and they from Lithuania they're migrating somewhere else, but not here in Latvia. At least we do not see here in our house. But could you please describe what is happening and how the structure looks like right now?
It's a very interesting situation we have in the Baltics. I would say that before the Brexit, UK was the #1 fintech hub in Europe. After the Brexit, Lithuania became #1 hub for fintech. It's still #1 for EMIs, number of EMIs. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's still #1. And what happened when MLD5 came into force, crypto became a thing. Some regulators in Europe, they opened up this kind of registration authorization to be able to establish a crypto asset company. So what happened that in Lithuania, it was quite easy to do so. All you had to do was to set up a limited liability company with a €2,500 budget, designate CEO, MLRO, sign on a paper that they know the laws, and pretty much you get the registration. And you then authorize. Yeah, and that's it. It was super simple, and it was done similarly in Estonia. Very simple approach, no checks. It just if you fill the checks, state registry just issues you those documents. And what happened? I remember there were articles because this data was not published by the state registry. There were close to 1,000 or more than 1,000 crypto companies in Lithuania at the end of the last year, around that time. And it was a big concern to the regulator because in Estonia, they had a bigger issue. They had even more companies. And they had situations where one company was registered in a flat apartment. I'm sorry, 10 companies were registered in a flat apartment where no more than 3 people could live. So it was clearly a scam or loophole. So Estonian regulators, they started closing that loophole, auditing those companies, enacting requirements, capital requirements, etc. So the number of those companies shrank. And what happened? Almost all of them migrated to Lithuania. Now, Lithuania had this big bag of companies they don't want to kind of deal with. Around November of last year, they enacted new changes. They raised the share capital to €125,000, increased some other requirements, and then the number shrunk significantly. And I would say overall, it's still, Baltics is still one of the most attractive markets for the crypto companies because of the size, because of the regulators. Regulators are very keen, very proactive, very friendly. Also, there is a huge untapped potential. I would say tapped in some markets, but in others, I would say still untapped of professionals that you can access. Because when we're saying crypto companies, they still need staff. They need MLROs, they need compliance specialists and others.
And they will need even more after the MiCA regulation.
And even more. And Latvia is very famous for its banking sector, or at least it was, and still has a huge number of compliance specialists and professionals, businessmen who understand the banking sector. And it's the same throughout the Baltics. So right now what we see is that some regulators in the Baltics, they took proactive step before the MiCA to implement some of these changes. Interestingly, Lithuania wanted to implement the travel rule just before the MiCA. It was in the proposal. But now when the MiCA will come in, it will even out the changes and will start from the blank paper. And it will be interesting to see how each regulator will react to that change.
Yeah, I mean, in Latvia, our position as a Minister of Finance, they also want to implement the MiCA as fast as possible, and even the MiCA will have this transition period from 12 to 18 months. Most probably we will be able to go faster. And just to explain a little bit more regarding the travel rules, the travel rule is an additional regulation to the MiCA that actually will regulate the AML issues concerning what is happening in the crypto world. So it is a very tough. However, I think now the market will be less transparent, more transparent in comparison that we have now. It means that the investors shall feel themselves more also safe and secured. And that is one of the tasks of the regulatory, to be sure that companies who are working in the crypto space, they comply to the regulation. And about the companies, so what is could you please elaborate a bit more? What is the level of preparedness to MiCA, at least Binance side, or maybe you can also to review how market feels? Okay. Are they ready to take out, to implement all those changes?
So Binance is unquestionably one of the leaders in the space. In terms of the number of customers, it's one of the leading ones in the space. If you look at the Web3 as a whole, it's also one of the leading companies. So it's not a secret to say that we've been preparing for MiCA for quite some time, and it's reflected in our strategy and our authorizations. I think today we are the most authorized and licensed crypto company in Europe. We have authorizations in Italy, France, Cyprus, Lithuania, Sweden, Poland, I think Spain as well, and to name a few. And no other company in Europe that works in the crypto space has that many authorizations. Also, our number of staff that work with compliance is over 700. It's a huge number, and total number of employees is from I can't remember. It's between 6,000 to 7,000 employees. So it's relatively small for the number of that process, but it's a big compliance powerhouse. So we've been preparing. One of the things we did, so we upped the requirements. So for example, in Lithuania, we have our fiat company, Bifinity, which is our fiat powerhouse. It now has a bumped share capital to correspond with new requirements. We've also been analyzing MiCA to make sure we're able to implement and to enforce these changes. It's a little bit early to say for Binance which jurisdiction it will pick to be one of the key European MiCA holders, but we have plenty to choose from. In terms of the competitors, I would say, or generally the space, or crypto space, it will be challenging to some because it's clear that you will need to invest a lot of resources. And if you look at the traditional finance, let's see, banking sector, payment sector, or Revolut was recently on stage, most of the OPEX or operational expenses go to compliance. It's one of the key things that you have to invest in. And with MiCA, you'll have to invest even further, as well as to invest in lawyers, invest into risk matrices, etc., etc. So we are getting much closer to traditional finance, which means that you will need to shift your resources from marketing to compliance and legal. And as I used to joke between my friends, that it's lawyers' business right now.
So it means that you will be accepted into finance world, let's say, regulated finance world. But how do you see, for example, the situation in Europe? If we will compare the MiCA regulation with crowdfunding regulation, what we have expected? We had plenty of crowdfunding platforms across the Baltic, across the Europe. There are like 500 or something like that in a total. And as a result, when the crowdfunding regulation have been becoming into the force, we have been expected that Europe will be overloaded with the application licensing. And what we see right now is that currently only about the 20 licensing issued during all this period. It is actually, wow, we haven't been expected. And there are like kind of consolidation happening on the market right now. In your opinion, will we see in a crypto space something like that? Also, companies will be consolidated, the number will be closer, but maybe the services will be better. Or they will be even grow up, and it will give just additional boost to the increase and growth to this industry.
It's a very difficult bet to make. and with my crystal ball, I could say that generally, if we put the world map in front of us, we can see that some jurisdictions, some regulators clearly have crypto as their priority, and they're really betting on crypto as the future of economy, and they're betting on their laws and companies that they will provide a huge boost to their economy. And some of these regulators are situated in Europe, and I think with MiCA, we will have a unified, same level playing field. Whether you establish your presence in Latvia, in Germany, or in France, you'll be able to operate the same exact way throughout the Europe. What it means that smaller jurisdictions, such as Baltics, will have their opportunity to create this success story, to build up infrastructure and build up this this whole market. It's a bit. On the other hand, MiCA itself is not process-wise. It's a little bit, I would say, complicated, or it's safe to say it's a little bit more complicated than it is right now. So for regulators, it means that they will need to increase their staff, increase their expenditures, resources to process the applications, and it's the same on EU level, because right now to be at least in MiCA, it says that if you want to be authorized for, let's say, e-money tokens or other authorizations, application it's a multiple level application. You submit application to your regulator, regulator makes an assessment, then regulator submits the application to the European authorities, then other regulators can submit their opinion. So in the time-wise, it's quite lengthy process, and it's going to be taxing for the regulator itself as well. So I think that's a little bit of disadvantage time-wise, but overall, I think the fact that now we'll have a clear regulation, which is understandable. We won't have a regulatory arbitrage, which means that you get better conditions in one country than in the other, and it's very easy to explain to foreign investors and others what exactly you need to comply with. I think this is a big advantage, and Europe should probably play this card very hard.
Yeah, let's cross our fingers. But it's actually interesting from the other angle. You just mentioned that it will be like a more complicated process during the application period to get all the papers done and all other stuff. But from the other side, do you think that it also will decrease? I will really hope that it will decrease the situations with the FTX, for example, with such case that we had in the US, and actually this is also one of the target of the regulation, just to decrease as maximally as possible and prevent the situations that happened. And all of us most probably were following what are those largest mistakes that have been done, but there are a lot of things that we can learn from this process also. Could you a little bit more, from your own opinion, to comment the situation? What can we learn from FTX case as a Baltic states, because we are actually young in this area in comparison to US or China?
I think what FTX teaches us that what lack of regulation and what lack of supervision does. And I'm not really in a position to comment. I'm not very well acquainted with this case. It's still an ongoing process. And as you may know, Binance was one of the investors in FTX. So I would like to maybe step back a little bit and say that there were some clear regulatory gaps in the regulation, and it's not only in USA, it's also in European Union. One of the key things that FTX was challenged for, or was, I guess, caught for, was mismanagement of client funds. If you look at the traditional regulation, if you use clients' funds, you always have to keep them separate. You have to protect them by investing in tier one bonds or papers, which are very highly securitized, very safe. So your client funds are protected. And in case of insolvency, it's very easy to separate good eggs from the bad eggs. In Europe, at least up to this stage, in most of jurisdictions, there are, of course, few exceptions with the national laws, but mostly in Europe, there are no requirements to do so. And with MiCA, this is fixed. So it will be required for all the issuers to keep those, if you're issuing e-money tokens, for example, or other asset reference tokens, to keep them separate. So I think that European regulator, they took note of what happened there, and we can see clearly in the discussions and the process of MiCA, because I think it was expected by the market to come into force a little bit earlier. But all the FTX situation taught us well, and I think regulator took notice and implemented those changes. And I think the situations like that will happen less, but it's not completely bulletproof. Because we can say for the fact in the 2008 market crash, financial market crash, there were some changes made to the laws. Federal acts were changed, but it's still, issues happen later down the line. So it's not bulletproof, but I think this MiCA clearly addresses these issues and lessons were learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the regulation is always developed for the good guys, not for the bad actors. And those bad actors, unfortunately, are appearing time from the time. But it's interesting. I mean, one of the very specific issues in this case also was the corporate government, actually, because they have fully absent of that kind of establishment that is leaded also the organization to the bankruptcy and a chaotic approach to financing, climate funds, any kind of other procedures. MiCA now will also apply to those companies to set up the government bodies. So they share responsibility, not shared, but dedicated persons with dedicated responsibilities that will also create like corporate structure. That is quite important. Maybe even we will have less companies on the map, but the quality should be decreased in a majority of cases.
I completely agree. One of the key things for traditional financial players when they submit a license is the staff. Regulator looks at the staff, at the experience, knowledge, do they understand the laws, do they know how to manage the company, etc. And it's similar approaches now being transferred to MiCA. Regulators now will have a power to reject application from the participant to issue a token or to set up the company, to get authorized if they have concerns over the management, over the knowledge, etc. So these are not specifically laid down what exactly it means, but regulators have already a big amount of knowledge to what to look for in those people. And I think it's a very welcome approach because you cannot have a sustainable and healthy economy, especially crypto economy, without that. And I think I would like to maybe add something. There is a little bit misconception, I think, in the crypto players and crypto enthusiasts sometimes, and sometimes, at least in the past, I saw that from the regulators as well. The thought was that crypto players, they really want to be unregulated. They really like this Wild West, to be in this unregulated environment, offer random services, etc. But our founder correctly made the point that right now the whole crypto, if you take basically all crypto, it covers maybe 2 to 5% of population, and rest 90% roughly is untapped. If you as a business you want to go to the rest of 90% and to have your mother, your grandma, your wife, your neighbor using crypto as a daily service, and not only for trading, but for Air Baltic, for example, voucher program, traveler points, you need to be regulated. You need to have the rules, you need to have investor protection, you have to have marketing requirements, etc. So it's a very welcome step. And
Absolutely.
It's all the market players are really looking into that and really looking forward to that.
Absolutely. This is something also that we heard from our Latvian market players. They want to be regulated, especially when they are going to fiat guys in the financial sector, in banking, or any kind of organization on FinTechs and RegTechs, and they're trying to collab and to do something. It is always like who you are. You are like licensed somewhere, or how we shall approach kind of establishments. And if we will jump to this question, this symbiosis between the fiat world and crypto world, how do you see what will be the impact? Will MiCA lead and help those fiat and crypto worlds enter into the traditional financial finance, or it will be still two common parallel, metaverses that exist or coexist together?
It's Marine, very difficult question you're asking, but it's clearly a step into that direction. I think for the short to medium term, we'll still see fiat and crypto world working in parallel with some conjunctions. And some players in the market, they already offer that. We can see that MasterCard, Visa, for example, they have great programs. They issue crypto cards, etc. So there are conjunctions with that. As well, there are some products that tap into both worlds. This regulation, I think it's a first major step into that area. Second step will be, I think, in 2025, when the EU Commission will have to review the MiCA, and you have to look into the stage 2, basically, of MiCA, and to think how to regulate NFTs, how to regulate utility tokens, when we'll have these stablecoin rules, etc. And I think we'll be done in stage 2. But after stage 2, there might be a couple of more stages left until we can basically say that these two worlds are interchangeable or very close together.
Yeah, because the financial sector, traditional financial sectors, they are quite selective. Maybe not the pessimistic will be not the right word, but they are very conservative in that reality. But actually, there is like no way out. You have to go approach, and you have to understand how to take the best of it in order to create kind of value.
There are some interesting initiatives that just recently came into the force and were supposed to be transposed in the national law. EU DLT initiatives, which is Distributed Ledger Technology Initiative, which basically allows bond market issuers to use blockchain technology for that without any very burdensome additional authorization. So the regulators, they're actually giving them a sandbox to play with, to understand the blockchain technology. And this is, again, one of the ways for the regulator to offer a ground to do that. Because a lot of regulators, especially in the Baltics, they already offer sandbox regime to the new players to test out the traditional finance. And I think similar things are now going on in the crypto space as well.
Yeah, and as a Central Bank of Latvia, also we have a sandbox. So if here someone want to deal with the crypto or established kind of startup in this area, so you are welcome to our innovation hub and sandboxes. So to get our experts to be in connection, and we can see how we can support from your side. So I think it was an interesting discussion.
Thank you, Marian.
And we can actually continue a couple of hours more, but maybe we have some other questions from the room. I don't know. Looks like everything great. So I would like to thank you very much.
Thank you, Marian. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. And let's hopefully think that crypto winter will be ended somewhere.
Right.
Thanks.